We're going to start with a little test this morning. I want to know whether you can name the 7 deadly sins, okay? So if you know any of them, just call them out. We'll see if we can compile the whole list. Anybody? Lust. Everybody knows lust. All right, that one's quick. Got that. Check that one off the list. What else we got? Gluttony, greed, sloth, anger, wrath, gluttony, avarice, envy. Do we get envy? All right, I think you've got them all. I don't mean you've got them all. I just mean, but now, all right. Here's the next question. Which book of the Bible did it come from? Any guesses? Well, let's see. Old Testament or New Testament? Old Testament. All right, it's a trick question. They're not in the Bible. You were right. It was in 1590. Of the Common Era that Pope Gregory the Great defined these 7 vices as sins and as deadly. Now today I want to focus on what is probably the most deadly of them all, and that's anger or wrath. Of course, there's a lot of anger in the Bible. God has a lot of anger. And it's not pent up either. God knows how to express anger, right? Now, even Jesus, despite his plea to turn the other cheek, gets pretty angry a few times in the Gospels. And of course, if the biblical prophets were around today, they would be sent to attend anger management classes. There are a lot of powerful images in Western culture that reinforce this idea that anger is bad for us, that anger is a sin. There's Dante's Divine Comedy, in which he describes a terrifying journey through the 9 levels of hell. In Dante's work, those who succumb to the sin of anger are thrown into the 5th level, where they're trapped in the swamp-like waters of the river Styx, where they can be found ruthlessly beating one another and ripping off each other's limbs as they futilely try to escape. It's a heck of a way to spend eternity. But somehow the threat of eternal hell has not quelled people's penchant for anger. And then there's Homer's Iliad, where he depicts the story of the Trojan War, a story about the wrath of Achilles, which demonstrates how anger can lead to selfishness and dishonor and death. But all we have to do today is look around if we want to find anger and its consequences. From road rage to grocery store rage. I saw a couple of ladies in the food pyramid the other day. I thought they were about to go at it. And the violence at youth sporting events. And half the time it's the parents who are getting into these fights. Even Little League parents, they're out of control. So sometimes it seems like we're becoming a nation of angry and short-tempered people. And thousands of years of religious prohibition has not seemed to assuage our anger. In fact, the United States is the most religious nation in the developed world, and yet we have the highest rates of murder and violence. Interesting. Then we read about how God and Jesus and the prophets in the Bible get angry, and we have to ask, is anger really the sin? Or is it being angry at the wrong things that's a sin? If you get more angry about a scratch in your car than you do about the fact that thousands of children go hungry every day in Oklahoma, well, then maybe the sin is not being angry, or the sin is the anger being misplaced. When you think about all the cruelty and the crime and the corruption in our world, if a person does not feel some anger, that may be the sin. Now, in the past 10 days, I've been talking to a lot of people, like Reverend Davis, they were angry people, talking about the situation of the devastating earthquake in Haiti. Some of the people I've met are angry at God. They're wondering how God could allow such pain and suffering to happen. They've come to the conclusion that God cannot be both all-powerful and all-good. That God has to either be all-powerful or all-good, but not both. They realize that if God is all-powerful, then God is responsible for the enormous suffering of innocent children and animals and so many others in Haiti. And therefore, God cannot be all good or all just at the same time. Now, or God is all good and just by definition, and therefore, God must not be all-powerful. Otherwise, a good God that's all-powerful would not let such a tragedy happen. Some people say God is neither good nor powerful because God does not exist. And others, like Pat Robertson, still want to believe that God is good and all-powerful, and that means that the Haitians must deserve what has happened to them. If you want to know what makes me angry, it's comments like Pat Robertson's. At a time of immense and grotesque and horrific devastation and grief, he blames the Haitians for supposedly bringing this upon themselves. We need to remember that Haiti was freed of its colonial oppressors through a slave revolt. It was the first, maybe the only country to be freed through a slave revolt. And so if Robertson is correct, his statement is that the Haitians won their freedom through a pact with the devil. That means that the devil freed the Haitian slaves from their European oppressors. And God is somehow mad about it and holding a grudge 200 years later. So, because the Haitians wanted to be free of slavery, God is punishing their great-great-great-great-grandchildren by brutally killing, maiming, and starving them and their babies and their mothers and their fathers and making them suffer excruciating pain and deprivation. It's comments like that that make me angry. And the fact that millions of people still take the man seriously and give him money. Now, since I'm clearly a bit teed off this morning, the question arises, how do we deal with anger in a way that does not lead to our own dishonor or even death? To find the answers, let's start by looking at how God deals with God's anger in the Bible. Seems like a reasonable place to start.